Welcome to this episode of Biz for Biz WebeXions. Following on from our last episode where we talked to Norman Jennings regarding employment and getting Hertfordshire working, I'm delighted to welcome Claire Scarisbrick from Hertfordshire Futures, who is the Skills Delivery Manager. And today we're going to talk about apprenticeships and everything that goes with apprenticeships and what they can do for business. So welcome, Claire. Delighted to have you today.
Thank you, Ian. It's really good to be here and be able to speak to you about apprenticeships.
Brilliant. I guess what we'll do is we'll dive straight in and maybe a bit of context around apprenticeships and maybe what part they play today. They've been around for many years, haven't they? So, but with varying degrees of success. So maybe just a bit of context around that for our viewers.
Yeah. So apprenticeships have been around for a long time, but lots of people previously associated them with supporting people that work in the trade, so in construction, plumbing, electrical companies like that. But actually, there's over 800 different types of apprenticeships that can be used. So they can be used to fill a lot of different skills gaps within businesses, whether that is taking on somebody new or upskilling someone in an existing role. And they can literally fill any gap from anything within finance to general business functions, in engineering, construction, still loads and loads of different areas. And they're a great way to take on people, so to recruit new people into the business, but also to use to upskill people as well.
Yeah, I think that there's we always talk about this skills gap. So, and it's interesting you talk about the number of apprenticeships available because, as you quite rightly say, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, it might have been a bricklayer or a plumber or something like that. But now the landscape has changed immensely, hasn't it?
We know that times are changing a little bit with the skills landscape. We know that processes and technology is changing for businesses, and they perhaps don't have those people within their workforce that can do those functions. So apprenticeships are a great way to both recruit into those functions if they want to take new people on that can be used to bring in new skills around maybe AI or technology, but also things like the green agenda as well. If businesses aren't able to actually recruit somebody new in because of payroll costs, then apprenticeships can also be used to upskill people within those positions as well. And there's so many different apprenticeship options that can be used.
I think you just mentioned costs there, which is obviously a huge barrier, unfortunately, at the moment, because business do have to take a leap of faith with some people at times to get them skilled. So there's a couple of points there. I just wanted to know, there's obviously we've seen recent announcements from the government in terms of the support that is available. When we chatted with Norman Jennings, there seemed to be a lot in the county available to support the whole connectivity and employment with business and travel and all these sorts of things. So obviously with the increase in employment costs, what are we seeing from the government now to support businesses? And I'm assuming they come via you, if you like, to help with that information and support.
Yeah, they do. So it's a really good question because actually what the government have done, and they made some changes literally within the last couple of weeks around funding costs. And the government really wants to invest in young people and the youth. Yeah. So when we talk about young people, we mean under 25, so not really young.
No.
But what they have done is given initiatives so that SMEs, so our small businesses, can feel confident that they can take on an apprentice, but have an incentive. So there's a grant payment that can be made to those businesses to give them a little bit of support in being able to take an apprentice on. Apprentice wages are less than the minimum wage, particularly even if they're over 21, their first year, they could be paid less. We always ask that businesses consider a fair wage, but we also know that costs are important for businesses. So there is that option as well. So there's some great ways that businesses can take on an apprentice. They are also the training part of it. So with an apprenticeship, you have 4 days in work, and then 1 day is key because that is when they would go off to a training provider to learn their new skill. And that training course that training will be fully funded by the government as well, particularly for SMEs.
I guess you just answered the other part of my thought process and question in that you've got apprenticeship. You might have a new a new skill required, and you want to bring on an apprentice. But that's that learning support, the off the job learning support. I think what are we seeing a wider curriculum of subjects now within colleges and training programs?
Yeah, we are. There has to be, really, because of the way that the world is changing. So we have seen new apprenticeship standards in things like AI. There's a lot of green tech stuff as well. But there are still apprenticeships in retail, in hospitality. They really do cover the full board. I would challenge you, Ian, to give me an apprenticeship subject that we couldn't find an apprenticeship to support, because there are so many. So they really are there to fit any skills gaps that a business could come up with.
I think that's testament to the education system in a way, that they've had to play a bit of catch up, in my personal opinion, to actually match the learning with the jobs of the future. So there's a lot more, as AI is the classic example, isn't it? It's not about bricks and mortar and stuff like that. There's a lot more digital design and work that goes into those sort of things. And I think colleges, schools, and others are catching up quite quickly with what is required. And I see in Hertfordshire that they're actually talking to business more to actually understand what businesses want. Is that
totally great? In Hertfordshire, we're really lucky. We've got 4 really great colleges, along with other independent training providers as well. So we have masses of support. However, they don't necessarily cover every apprenticeship standard, because I did say there's only about 800 of them. So we at Hertfordshire Futures, we do have an advice support team that is able to support employers to find the right training provider and the right apprenticeship standard. Wherever possible, obviously, we keep it as local as we can, because we know our colleges really well. We know that they offer really great learning and teaching. But if we need to, we do know other training providers as well that we can support businesses with getting in contact with and setting up those apprenticeships.
Yeah, no, well, I guess the aim is to keep the apprentice in the county, in the locality, and not have to travel miles and miles to go and do a training program, but actually is sort of close. It comes back to the conversation I've had before about the connectivity and links that we're now seeing within the county, which is great.
No, that's true, Ian. But I mean, a lot of the training providers will use online learning as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
One thing that COVID gave us, I guess, is young people that know how to learn online. They're used to it, just like I guess we're having this meeting today. They're really familiar with it, and they're quite tuned into learning online. So some programs, particularly if they're not so hands-on sort of areas, they will be done online, or a mixture, which is nice.
Yeah, no, it's I always find that if you can get a mixture, that makes it a little bit more interesting for the individual, and actually in meeting peers and colleagues, all helps for the workplace. So I'm probably moving on a little bit in terms of, we've talked about apprenticeships, the number that are available, the government support that's available. So, that business out there that wants to take those first steps, what would you recommend they should do to start an apprenticeship program? Is there some practical steps? Obviously, they need to identify an opportunity, a skill gap, and then take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is to identify skills gaps, and most businesses that will be quite obvious, but sometimes it won't be. The next bit is the hardest bit, which is finding the right apprenticeship standard to fit that gap. But the service I mentioned earlier to you, which is a fully funded service, so it's a paid for service that Hertfordshire Futures offers. We support businesses to find that right apprenticeship standard, because that is really key. Because sometimes there could be some that there could be more than one that could meet that skills gap need, but it's really honing it in and making sure that the right one is there for the right employer.
Yeah.
And that is what that service would do. And then the next part in the process is, once you've sorted out which apprenticeship standard you would use, we find the training provider, which is also key, like we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And the training providers are great at doing the hand-holding stuff, sorting out any funding, which might come up. As a reminder, if someone's under 25, it's all funded within by the government if it's an SME.
Yeah.
So all that bit is sorted. They can help with recruitment if they are recruiting somebody in. So there is the government have a website called Find an Apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So they can support recruitment. They might know people. They can support with the ads. So training providers are really key with that part and actually getting someone onboarded onto that apprenticeship program.
You've just answered my next question, because the obvious question was, well, you've got the apprenticeship over here and you have a lot of youngsters under 25s, whatever, 18 to 25 over here, or looking for something. So that's great to know that there's a resource out there in various guises that will help to match up and find those that really want to get into that area of work. I'm sure.
Yeah, there are, but we've also got, so Hertfordshire Futures also fund a website, which is a really great platform for Hertfordshire residents, which showcases all apprenticeship opportunities and a lot of jobs as well within the county.
Yeah.
And so it would also be displayed on that. We have newsletters that go out and all sorts. So we will do as much as we can to support a business to find that right person for them. If they're over 25, because you don't have to be under 25 to be an apprentice. In fact, I am 50 and I'm an apprentice. I'm doing an apprenticeship program as an upskilling opportunity. So you can be any age as an apprentice. But if you're going to recruit someone that's over 25, if you're an SME, the government don't fund the whole training costs. They only fund part of it. So that's another part where we would step in and support finding levy transfer, which is a bigger companies with a £3 million payroll bill.
Yeah, payroll.
Pay into something called the Growth and Levy Fund. It used to be called the Apprenticeship Levy Fund, and we use some of that money. For anyone that it doesn't use all their funds, or any big company that don't use their funds, and that can be Hertfordshire County Council, so they're very generous in giving their levy part over as well. We will transfer that over to the SME so that they still get that same benefit of 100% fully funded apprenticeship costs. So it doesn't mean any age can be an apprentice.
That was interesting, because there's been lots of talk over the years about this apprenticeship levy of not, large businesses paying in, but it's not getting used, So
so true. We don't like that, Ian. We like to make sure that wherever possible, we use it.
Well, and this is it. And I think sometimes the purpose of what we do today, you and I, is giving awareness to business out there to listen and think, okay, there is support. Yeah, a lot of them think, oh, they've just got to employ somebody that, they'll take the risk and they'll pay the payroll, they'll pay everything. And yet actually they're shouldering all the development, yes, for their own purpose and for their own gain in the future, but probably not realizing there's opportunities, there's support, there's education, there's a whole, if you like, connectivity out there for various bits and pieces of support.
Absolutely. And it's a funded free service to get the advice on apprenticeships. It doesn't mean to say you've got to take one on. It's obligated to do it. But I would, if any business is considering it, or it's in the it's in the back of their mind, I would genuinely get in touch, and we can support and finding out if that's something that is relevant to them now or maybe in the future, but definitely what options that they have.
Yeah, no, from what you said, Claire, I think, and talking to Norman previously, Hertfordshire Futures is an absolute, gold pot, if you like, of information and resources. Yeah. So what we want to do is make sure our businesses can come to you. So what are the resources available in the contact process, and how do they just kickstart making that first inquiry?
So we have a website which is called hopinto.co.uk. So you can contact us through that. And if you want the web address, that is hopinto@hertfordshireFutures.co.uk. And that will go through to myself or one of the team, and we will be in contact because we can support with apprenticeships or any other skills programs. Actually, apprenticeships are wonderful because they're a great tool to recruit and they're a great tool to upskill. But sometimes we appreciate that they are quite lengthy. Most apprenticeships are around 18 months, some slightly shorter, some slightly longer. And we know that that's too long for some businesses. So there are other ways to upskill as well. And the team, we have masses of knowledge, both on local programs and national programs, and even the odd little skills program that you may never have heard about. And our job is basically to support businesses to find the right thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure our viewers can sort of just search engine Hertfordshire Futures and it will find their way in. You've given the details there, Claire, and equally, please come via Biz for Biz if necessary. They can actually find that. Will be when this is published, our viewers will be able to see the information on the front page for the contact. So we will do that. So thank you, Claire. It's been great talking to you today. And there's so much opportunity out there. We just need to actually make businesses aware of the information, the funding, the financial support that's out there, and the great work that our colleges are doing in Hertfordshire as well to support that whole program. So
yeah, absolutely. Get in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And thank you to our viewers for watching and listening, and look out for our next episode, which will be coming to your screen soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.